It's one thing to listen to doom and gloom about food and fertilizer shortages, skyrocketing prices, the cost of living, or your job being outsourced overseas or eliminated due to automation. It's quite another thing to hear practical, immediately actionable advice from experts who can help you reduce the fear, anxiety, and burden of these problems. Tune in now to the Surviving Hard Times podcast from the Finding Genius Foundation with Richard Jacobs. Before we begin, a note from our sponsor. I'm Richard Jacobs, Executive Director of the nonprofit Finding Genius Foundation and host of the Finding Genius podcast. In late 2016, I was rear-ended at 65 miles an hour by a truck on the highway, which sent me off-road into a ditch. The impact of the collision gave me a concussion and other injuries. At the hospital, a CT scan showed that I had thyroid nodules, which turned out to be cancer. It was then, when I had a biopsy in my neck, that I realized even if I was a millionaire, I wouldn't want a second or a third biopsy due to the pain and the invasiveness of it. And appointments at that time for thyroid experts were 3 to 6 months out. And I was worried about dying now, even if that was irrational. So because of this, I've decided to raise money to conduct a literature review on steroids, on the causes of anxiety and depression, a condition that affects well over 50 million people in the United States and hundreds of millions worldwide. Our goal is to create a codex, a guide, that reveals all possible treatments for anxiety and depression for people that live with the condition, or for loved ones that have it, as my wife and my son do. To find out more about our fundraiser, visit findinggeniusfoundation.org and click on Current Initiatives. And now, to our guest. Hello, this is Richard Jacobs with the Surviving Hard Times podcast, sponsored by the Finding Genius Foundation.
I have Glenn Loughridge. He's a director, campus dining and concessions at Auburn University. And we, how they produce and acquire local fresh food to feed to the Auburn people. Some of the issues surrounding that. So, Glenn, thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me. Looking forward to having a chat.
Well, excellent. Tell me a bit about your background and how you came into the position you're in, and then we'll kind of go from there.
So came a roundabout way. I did graduate from Auburn University. Obviously wanted to come back. My wife and I had always kind of plotted that way. I did own, you can see my kid's picture there on a fishing boat. I did own a commercial seafood business in Florida that I worked in for a few years. Yeah, stone crabs and grouper fish, and my brother's still in it. And so that was something I did for a long time, and actually got into management recruiting for restaurant managers. And I got to know some of the contractors that work business. And so when Auburn had an opening managing a contractor, that seemed like a good opportunity for me. And that's kind of how I got here.
If you don't mind, can we talk for a few minutes about the seafood business? I never met anyone that was in it, so it might be interesting.
Absolutely. Love to.
Okay. Yeah. Well, what kind of things came up there? Like, would you do fishing charters, or would you go out and fish yourself and provide, a catch to restaurants or other places? What was it like?
The latter. So we were kind of in distribution, so to speak. So we would catch it and then get it to restaurants. We didn't have a retail location. My brother and I had at one point we had 5 boats. We had 10,000 stone crab traps. And then we had a commercial license to catch bottom fish like grouper and snapper and things like that. And so my brother and I would fish together in the summers. We had a captain for some of the other boats, but that was a lot of fun from that perspective until I had young kids, and you're being gone for 7 days is not conducive to marriage and children. I can say that. It's a little tough.
Oh, so what would happen in order to fill the boat and make it worth it? You'd have to be at sea literally for days at a time?
Yes. I mean, it costs quite a bit. I mean, between fuel, you got to put 5,000 pounds of ice in the boat to really make it worth it. You wanted to bring home, a couple thousand pounds of fish. And so we would do hook and line fishing. We felt like that was, we could be selective about the catch that way. There's other methods of fishing that are quite a bit less selective, to say the least. We could release fish that didn't meet size limits, things like that. So we were able to harvest, like I said, grouper and snapper, and we could, move around different depths depending on the time of year. But most of the time we were fishing over the summers because the commercial stone crab season for Florida, which is a huge market in Florida, is from October 15th until May 15th. So that period of time we were typically crabbing.
Well, for getting crabs, what are some of the methods that you can use to get them, and, how does each work?
So it's interesting. Stone crabs are actually a renewable fishery because you don't keep the whole crab. We actually broke the claw off the crab. Sometimes you'd be able to break two because we were commercial. A lot of the ones that even when we broke both claws, they would jump back. They would climb back in our traps and eat our bait then. But they are able to regenerate their claws up to 4 times in their lifetime. You have to train your crew to break the claws correctly to make sure they release it and it doesn't tear off. But that's, I mean, we definitely did a lot of that. It's a small trap, 14 by 14 with a concrete bottom. They can be wood or plastic. They have a rope attached and you have 10,000 of them. So they're not run together. Some people put them together and what we call long line them, but we typically just would go with individual traps and you would pull a line of say 150 to 200 traps. You have 2 winches on the back end. If you've seen Deadliest Catch, they throw that grappling hook. We had long poles because we didn't have as big of boats. So we had about a 10-foot long, what we called a hook pole. You'd grab the line, throw it in the winch, reel it up, and then you'd have your crew would be clearing the trap of crabs, sorting anything that was too small. We'd go back over the side. Everything that met would be harvested, and then you throw the crab back and then bait the trap and push it over the side.
How often would you go look in the traps to see what was in there?
So you'd want to see them once a week, sometimes twice a week if it was really, really hot. If a storm hit, it's interesting. The crabs like to crawl around when the water's really murky because most of the things that eat them are sight predators. So, your grouper and snapper and other fish like that, triggerfish, they typically will predate a crab. So they don't like to be moving around especially at night when the other fish can see them. So they like it when it's the water's about like chocolate milk, really stirred up. So when it would storm, we'd want to go out there and get our traps baited because we knew the crabs would be crawling around.
Hey, yeah, it's tough. How would you know if how many times a crab's claw has been broken? Like, can you tell if someone's broken?
That was
before?
actually no. There's no way to tell. The University of Florida did the research on that. I'm just citing their research that they can do it up to 4 times. That was what I heard and read, but that was nothing I could prove. I think they actually did it in a lab.
Well, could you get a dot of some kind of marker, pull off the claw, go dot, on the arm that's left and then throw them back. And then if it stays, maybe you'd know there's 3 dots. This is the last one. Take the whole thing.
Well, the whole thing, they're not really edible. There's not a lot of meat in the main part of the crab, so it doesn't make any sense to take the whole crab. But as far as marking them, because crabs molt, it's hard to keep a mark on them because when they grow, they have that whole skin. Or that shell, then their outer skin hardens up again.
Wait, for the grouper and the other fish, could you take just the shell of a crab and tie it to fishing line and have it dragged along with the line so that?
You cannot. That would be a good way to get this deep water with the state of Florida. Stone crabs are definitely something that's a major industry in the state. Joe's stone crabs, famous. They're all the way out in Las Vegas. So there's quite a few restaurants that serve them in the state. And so they don't want you to have short crabs. They don't want you to have whole crabs. So they definitely watch that pretty closely.
Yeah, but if there's going to be some that don't make it, that die and get caught and all that stuff, I don't know. Is there any way to, are you saying the system would be abused? Why couldn't you say, hey, 1% of the crabs, they don't make it. So can we tie the shells to the nets and use it as bait? I
think it might be possible. I don't know how, like I said, logistically, when you're going through thousands of crabs a day, just the trying to mark them, trying to do something like that. I think the bet, obviously it would be great if we could get another use out of the ones that we know aren't going to make it. But I think practically when you're dealing with that many claws, we opening season, we'd catch 1,000 pounds. So, it's a lot of crabs.
Did you ever tell your kids that you caught Mr. Krabs or you had a Krabby Patty formula? They watch SpongeBob?
We didn't watch a lot of SpongeBob, but yes, I'm sure that they would have found that hilarious if I caught I used to tell them stories about the crabs because stone crabs are, they kind of face the world with their claws out. They're not a friendly animal. One of the stories I would tell them was really about cooperation because, one of the things that eat stone crabs is octopus. And so if an octopus gets in a trap, you've got, maybe 10 or 12 stone crabs that can crush clams with their claws. They could probably really put a hurting on an octopus, but because they're used to being on their own, they all go in a corner and they kind of huddle up and try to hide. And so the octopus just kind of wanders around in there with impunity and eats the crabs. If they all ganged up on the octopus and cooperated, they wouldn't get eaten. That's, that's kind of the life lesson there.
Well, at the end of the season, I would think that would be when you'd have the most crabs with no claws anymore, and the octopuses would go crazy. So maybe it'd be a good time to octopus fish a week or two after the season ends, because they'd be fat and happy, and it might be a lot of them.
It was interesting. So the octopus typically would push them inshore about the middle. When the water started getting cold, the octopus would push them from offshore towards the inshore. And so you'd want the trick was to get traps ahead of the octopus, kind of pushing them inshore, because that you get a big bunch of crabs that way. But towards the end of the season, the octopus have already gone back offshore. It's just one of those vagaries of the way it worked. So we didn't see a lot of octopus in the spring. We saw them all with them before Christmas most of the time.
Okay, gotcha. Well, I guess, all right, so transitioning to your current work at Auburn University, like, what are your job duties and what do you do? And, ask some questions around that, if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely. The main thing I do is kind of the advocate between the university and our contractor. We have Aramark is our current food service provider. So we have 38 locations on campus that include food trucks, dining halls, coffee shops, all of the above. And then we have concessions in all of our athletic venues. So those are my primary duties. The things I do every day is just make sure that we're meeting the contract from both sides, that when there are opportunities for us to get better, let's say, that I'm communicating those, and that we're establishing a good understanding of what we expect every day, right? I mean, I think that's an important thing. You got to know where the wins are. It's hard enough. I mean, food service, I like to say we do 22,000 transactions a day. There's an opportunity for us to mess up at least one of those every day. And so we're going to have those, and we have to know that, but we also can react and try to not have the same ones over and over again.
What does that mean? What do you mean mess up? You're out of something, or supply chain, you didn't order enough, or what does mess up mean?
Oh, well, I mean, just it could be a customer service issue. The ketchup could have been out in the dining hall. Those are things that make people, upset. I mean, you're going to get a call from someone that didn't have the optimal experience, right? Could be they got a chicken sandwich that wasn't as hot as they wanted. It could be that something, they ordered, a coffee drink that wasn't made to their specifications. Those are all opportunities that can happen on any given day. And that can happen in any restaurant. It's just how you respond and how do we, value each customer equally.
Well, what did you notice about the ebb and flow of, what did people eat preferentially at different times? And, when did that change and how did it change? Like, did they eat more burgers in the summer and then in the winter they ate more soups, or, did you just give them what you guys thought you wanted?
I think that what I find interesting is the way tastes evolve with, we have obviously freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. So, your freshman year, they like to eat Chick-fil-A quite a bit. They eat a lot of chicken. So fried foods, familiar favorites, pizza, things like tend to be more freshman fare. And as they grow older, our food trucks are most popular with our juniors and seniors. And it's a little, it's usually something that's, we have a local restaurant that has a food truck that has a crab cake sandwich, a very popular turkey wrap. We have a food truck that serves, has gyros and Mediterranean style food. We have one that has Indian food. We have one that has, Asian noodle type fare. So it's those types of things. I think that students' tastes evolve. They try new things. They eat sushi more often, things like that. So I think that's pretty interesting to me, the way that their tastes tend to evolve over time.
What about supply chain issues? Have you had any, or have you not noticed that?
No, we definitely have had them. There's definitely been quite a few supply chain issues. I mean, typically you'll set your menu and then you'll adjust your menu based on what you actually got on the truck versus what you ordered. We've had a pretty good run of getting about 85% of what we ordered. And so you can, add to things that are available to kind of get through. But, we've had a couple of days where I've seen several of the same protein on the menu. You typically like to mix it up a little bit, but sometimes, hey, we got a lot of pork loin, but we didn't get chicken this time. So we're going to have a couple of different pork loin type dishes. And so that's, and that's part of it. Everyone's having to adjust to supply chain at this point.
Yeah. Okay. Any other interesting phenomena you observed, that I guess the public or the students don't see? Like, what are some of the big challenges you face with providing, enough food, the right food, a good experience, et cetera?
Absolutely. I mean, I think some of the, labor has been a big challenge. I think that it's interesting to see how people, think people want to deal with people anymore, which is not a good thing. I think that we have a very demanding consumer in this day and age, and every restaurant that I currently know is having trouble with getting enough staff. And so it's a tough job. It's one that comes with demands. And from a time standpoint, it's not necessarily the highest paying job all the time, although it's gotten better. But I mean, I think that there's, with the economy the way it is, as far as there's plenty of jobs out there, so people are making different choices. I think hospitality is one of those things that you really has got to be in your blood a little bit. You got to enjoy seeing people smile when they eat the food that you've prepared, and they've had a great experience. Knowing that kind of fuels you. And so I think, one of the things that we're really concentrating on right now is technology. There are incredible ovens and things like that allow us to utilize staff in different ways, where recipes are already programmed into the machine, into the oven, so that we can get optimal food out with less culinary talent. And because it's one of those things, it's hard to find a good sous chef right now. They're in high demand. So you typically will have an executive chef and we'll have cooks. And so you've got really at the very top of the food chain, and then you've got kind of entry level. So it's important to be able to use that technology to kind of elevate your cuisine without having to without having the body. Because again, we've typically had sous chefs that've kind of been that midpoint where they're doing a lot of teaching along the line, helping cooks understand what we're trying to get out of each dish. And now you just don't have those folks. And so I think it's really helped us to utilize technology.
Are there different levels of food that you can order, from the company, like grade A strawberries versus like grade B, or,
Well,
I'm sure there's all kinds of jokes like grade D, like fit for human consumption.
Well, grade D is not going to go over here. We do specify that we do want grade A foods. For us, one of the reasons we got into growing some of our own food, obviously it's a student desire, was first and foremost that they wanted healthier, locally grown options. And so I found that it was very expensive a lot of times to get to some of those foods. And so there's a real balance point that we have to have on a college campus. We have affluent students who can afford to eat organic and can have anything they want on a given day. But we also have students that have to, every penny counts. If things are too expensive, it means they're not going to eat as much. And we don't want, and so we try to find the balance there. And the dining hall is a good place to do that. We have the dining plans that are all access that allow a student to eat all of their meals with us. And so we want to make sure that we're exposing them to things that are healthy and hopefully that they find really interesting. And again, that's one of those things where we started growing our own produce to try to take advantage of that, to give students an experience that maybe they can't have somewhere else. We grow lettuce on campus and we harvest it and we bring it to dining hall that day. It's very hard to eat lettuce that was harvested the same day. I mean, I can tell you, unless you live in Yuma, Arizona, it would be hard to have access to it. I mean, that most of the lettuce that's grown and for this country is grown in Arizona, California, and Mexico. And so for Alabama, we're going to, it's probably going to be 7 days. Doesn't mean it's bad. It just means it's 7 days old. And so our shelf life is better, things like that. It really helps with those things. Tomatoes are another one. We have tomatoes that we're growing in our aquaponics system that I'll put up against anything. I mean, they are amazing tomatoes. They taste great. And we want the students to have that experience because hopefully that's going to create in them a preference for local food, for food that was allowed to vine ripen, things like that. So that's always been something that's really important.
Yeah. How are people reacting to the stuff that you grow? Like, so you grow lettuce, and what else do you grow?
We grow tomatoes, peppers. And again, we're working with the horticulture students and faculty. So sometimes we've grown quite a few cucumbers in the past. Grow, like I said, peppers and tomatoes, pinos. We do romaine lettuce. We do a lot of leafy greens. We have some vertical farms called freight farms that we're growing a lot of our leafy greens out of. That gives us that's controlled environment, allows us to get exactly what we want on a given week. So we it's very predictable. As long as the power doesn't go out, we've got, 150 pounds of spring mix every Monday. Now they eat it by Wednesday, but it's something that we can expect and we can feature, and students really love it.
Yeah. Well, what does that do to the food you guys provide? So it's a mixture of what you guys grow and then what you guys buy off the trucks.
Yes.
Have you found what combination is enough to make the food, I don't know, stand out and be perceived as far better than just getting stuff off the truck only?
Right. We do some branding, and, we like to, point that out, let people taste it. I mean, I think that they can taste the difference. I mean, it's very tender. Obviously the nutritional value. I mean, my understanding is that you can lose up to 50% of the nutrition in lettuce each day after it's been harvested. That's something that's been cited to me. And so that just thinking about it in those terms, even if you take taste out of the equation, the fact that you're going to get so much more nutrition out of something that was harvested quickly like that. I think there is a opportunity for us to do a better job of, we're working on a branding effort now, and that is kind of the soup to nuts approach about food on campus, from where we grow it, where we serve it, what do we do with food that's left over. So we do have food each that we over prepare, and it's perfectly good food, never got served. And we are able to recover that with we have a food recovery network on campus that we built a space for. They're called campus kitchens. And so they've recovered 50,000 pounds of food in a year, from us and from some other local restaurants. And
what do you mean recover? Like they resell it?
Well, they don't sell it. No, sir. They actually do donate it to folks that are food insecure. So what we do is we freeze it. We have blast chillers. So typically this would be something that was in a hot box ready to go out on a line, because we have to be ahead, because, if you get 100 students that come, at 8 p.m., you got to be able to feed them. And so we've got some things that get prepared ahead of time to be able to serve. It's fresh food made that day, every day. We don't hold it over for the next day. So that food typically would have been wasted. But we are able to take that, put it into a blast chiller, bring the temperature down quickly to make it safe. It then is transferred over to campus kitchens. Those students, it's all student led. They pick it up from our dining hall. They take it over to their space, and they have a walk-in freezer in their space here on campus. And then they'll divide that out and portion it out into meals. And then they serve it to students who are here on campus, if they need it, or if, they serve quite a few meals in the community as well.
So what's it like at other schools? I don't know if you converse with, the same person in your position at other universities. Like, is there a big variation in how universities do what you do? Or, do you feel like you're leading the way, or you're learning, techniques from other places?
So, we have the number one chapter of I would say, of, Campus Kitchen for sure. It was a national organization, is not one anymore. I do know that there are other food recovery networks. And I have to say that, I wasn't the one that created it. I'm just a big supporter and a big fan of these students who do such amazing work. There are different schools handle food in different ways. I'm not sure how many of them have food recovery networks. I knew that there are a few. University of Kentucky definitely comes to mind. They have a great program and really prize sustainability as far as local sourcing, as well as making sure that they have a place on campus where students can get inexpensive meals. They've got a great program for that. So different folks handle it different ways. For us, Campus Kitchens has been just an amazing student organization. One of my favorite stories is they do serve. There's a local, retirement community for folks that need assisted living care. Our students will actually go and they'll warm food up and take it there and eat with the residents. And what they found is it's created such a community, because the residents would typically take their meals in their room until they knew they could come down and see kids that look like their grandkids. And they come down and eat with college students. And by doing that, they met their neighbors. and began kind of a process where community got built in because they started seeing other people, they started making friends. And so it was a really big deal what they did, but it really speaks to how food and community are so inextricably linked.
Yeah, no, that's really cool that it did that. Interesting. Do any of the students want, I mean, I don't think Auburn operates, let's say, necessarily a culinary school, but do they? Are you able to use the food department to, for students that are interested in culinary arts to train them and stuff like that?
We actually have just finished building culinary school that's literally across the street from us. It's attached. So we have an excellent hotel restaurant management program and we now have a world-class facility that I would put up against anybody's. So we have our first class this year, and that is definitely something that we're excited about, is the opportunities to partner going forward. Really, the students a lot of the students that are in campus kitchens are pre-med students. They need service hours, and it's been a great way for them to get service hours with something that really touches the public. But there's lots of other students that are involved as well.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. There's a lot of things you can do with this that you are doing. It's really great.
Absolutely.
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. What areas do you think still need improvement or need to be pushed forward, and how?
So for us, I mean, I think, we're struggling with composting a little bit. Just currently, Auburn is pretty landlocked, and and property values are very high. So finding a large tract of land where we could do composting has kind of been, a difficult situation. The other thing is that there's not many people that want to own composting. If I want to be blunt, it's a difficult, nobody wants to deal with, post-consumer waste, things like that. So we've kind of identified a system we'd like to implement. We're working with our facilities folks on campus to find a site where we can have an end-to-end composter. And that's definitely something we want to invest in, because I feel like that kind of creates that perfect circle where we would be able to bring back food that would have been waste and can be composted and then turned into soil. And then, we'd be able to use that to grow more food. I mean, that's kind of the point, right? To be able to return.
What is composting perceived as like a low level job, or why are people not attracted to it at all?
Well, I mean, it's expensive to do when you don't have a place, you know what I'm saying? So like if we had a program, if we had and we do have agronomy and soils, we are land grant university, but we've, a lot of our folks have concentrated on other, endeavors, let's say. I mean, we don't have a researcher that was really focused on it. And that's really what I've been fortunate with horticulture. Controlled environment was very interesting to, especially Dr. Wells, and then obviously Dr. Lane as well, that are here on campus, that they're interested in that and going forward with it and bringing that to the state of Alabama. So when you have researchers that are interested in a subject, then you have, kind of folks that want to partner with you. We just haven't found that partner yet. We can bring some funding to the table for it, but it's just one of those things where it really, I can't own that. I've got a big job as it is, and it's not something I can do myself.
Yeah, I understand. There's only so much you can do, but it sounds like you're doing a lot. Recovering 50,000 pounds of food each year is tremendous. That's really, really cool.
Yeah, it's been something we've been very proud of. And really, again, it's prizing food as a resource. I think it's the most sustainable thing we can do is to recover food and feed those who are hungry. I think it's really critical.
Yeah. So, again, where is the program headed? Anything new that you're working on that is going to be rolled out soon, or
something we are working on right now is we've been doing some research, and what we've linked is the average transactions a student has on campus in their final GPA. And what we did was we found that if you graph it, that students who have a lower GPA typically have lower transactions on campus, and students with a higher GPA have more transactions. And that really is not so much that eating makes you smarter, because I would love that to be true, because I'd be a genius. I eat here all the time. The problem is, or I guess the opportunity is more time spent here. Everything that we have that's focused on student success, the community that we can build here, all of those things, they all reside on campus. And once you get home to your apartment or somewhere across the street, you're more than likely going to be tempted by, the potential 12-pack in your fridge or whatever else, your Xbox, Instagram or TikTok, whatever that is. It just makes it hard to come back maybe in the afternoon or to focus the way you need to succeed. And so it's really what I like to think of us as is an incentive for students to spend more time here. And so that's really where my focus is how do we continually create spaces that students want to be in? And if we can do that, whether that's with food, whether it's a coffee shop, whatever that is, if it's a space they want to hang out in, we're actually helping them succeed academically. We've actually gone back 4 years now and looked at a 4-year trend, and there's about a 38% difference between, say, a 2.0 student and a 4.0 student. And how many transactions that they had actually on campus. So it's not a function of, eating here. It is a function of being here.
What about, I don't know if this would be counterproductive, but what if you did like an internal DoorDash type service where students could sign up and you deliver it to their dorm rooms, or at night you deliver, again, they maybe pay a little extra, but the students that could afford it, maybe that would help save them time and et cetera, or maybe it would backfire. I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting. It's one of those, that's a question that comes up a lot for me is that, how far do we want to go to make it convenient, or do we really want them to come down from their room and go eat dinner with their peers? I think we have to be careful. So like, a late night food service, absolutely. I think that's a great opportunity for us. If we can, staffing it might be problematic at the moment, but if we could get there, I'd love it. I'd love to be able from say 9 p.m. on till say 2 a.m, be able to deliver food to students. That'd be great and safe. But really for dinner, we really want them to come down and eat in community. I mean, I think we feel like that's such an important part of your growth, of getting to know your peers, of connecting to Auburn. Our student experience is excellent. We've been rated, I think in 2021, we were rated by the Princeton Review as the happiest students, which is a great thing to have, as far as if you're gonna have a claim to fame, having happy students is not a bad one. So, so that's kind of one of those things. We really want them to get this opportunity that they have to get to know each other, to spend time, and to really get that Auburn experience that we feel like is really high value.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Well, very good. What's the best way for people to find out more about the program you're working on? Maybe they're from another university, student or faculty, and to learn from you guys as to what you're doing.
Well, we're at auburn.edu/dining. So you can go to our website there. You can email dining@auburn.edu. You can get my email from that, but happy to talk to anybody about anything that they heard and would be interested in learning more about.
Okay. Well, very good. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast. And like you said, you have a very interesting background. So there's a lot of great material we covered. And again, thank you for being here.
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks so much, Richard.
Before you stop listening, ask yourself, what are 1 or 2 useful things you heard on this podcast that can help you overcome food and fertilizer shortages, skyrocketing prices, the cost of living, or your job being outsourced overseas or eliminated due to automation? Please like and subscribe and tell your friends and family about the Surviving Hard Times podcast. We're all going to need help now and in the near future.